Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica and this is Rick's Reads. Today I'm going to be doing a tag. Thank you to Read Write Reese for tagging me in the I'll get around to it later tag. I think that's what this is called. Basically like what books you've been procrastinating on, which feels like either the perfect tag for me or maybe the most stressful tag for me because reading is supposed to be fun, but I am often overwhelmed looking at my TBR and all the books that I want to read. So I've got a lot of responses to these prompts. So yeah, I have lots of things to say. Normally, I try to film on the weekends in the morning when my brain is fresh. Today it's after work, so I'm gonna do my best right now, but my brain is not functioning like it should. I'm a little bit brain dead right now, so let's see how this goes. But I guess I'll just jump right into it. The first prompt is a classic book that you have been meaning to read forever but haven't read yet. A classic book, one actually that I had been wanting to read forever, but I'm reading right now is A Picture of Dorian Gray. That's been on my TBR for a long time and I'm finally reading it and I'm like obsessed with it so far. It is meeting my expectations fully. So I guess that's not an answer to this one, but that would have been a response for me a little bit ago. Um, I've been wanting to read War and Peace for a while. I read Anna Karenina a while ago and I really liked that. And I know they're very different, but that's been a daunting, big book that I just have been putting off that feels like a classic. Also, Handmaid's Tale feels like something that I've been putting off for a while. Anything by Toni Morrison, I feel like I've only read Beloved, but there are so many Toni Morrison books that I need to read, so I feel like those are all classics. The Bluest Eye has been on my TBR for a really long time. And then Lord of the Rings, I don't know if fantasy counts as classics, but that's been on my TBR for ever. And I was only supposed to say one of those. And I don't even know what makes something a classic. I don't even know if what I just said were classics, but that's again, my brain is not working. So I think those are classics that I want to read, and I'm going to try to keep to one moving forward. A book on your shelf that you haven't read yet. So many, so many of this is my problem. I have so many books on my shelf that I haven't read, but I'm gonna go with I bought this James Joyce that has a portrait of the artist as a young man and Dubliners. And the reason I got this was because I read a portrait of an artist as a young boy in high school and loved it and wanted to reread it and also wanted to read more Joyce. And so I got Dubliners too. And now it's just been sitting on my bookshelf for at least a year. And I have not reread A Portrait and I have not read Dubliners yet. So this has been sitting on my shelf for way too long. A book that you recently got that you haven't read yet, easy. I just did a video. Actually, the last books that I purchased, I talked about in my last video. When I was in Japan, I got two new books. Oh no, I'm moving around, you can see. This is my work from home outfit. Business on top, sweatpants on the bottom. um, anyway, in my last video, I talked about how on my last trip to Japan, I got Blind Willow Sleeping Woman by Harumi Murakami, and I also got Goodbye Sugumi by Banana Yoshimoto. So these are new, and I still have not read them yet. So those are the most recent books that I haven't read yet. Okay, next prompt. A book you've had forever and haven't read. I think for this one, I might go with War on Peace, not War and Peace, by Ronan Farrow. The End of Diplomacy and Decline of American Influence. This has been on my shelf for a long time. It's actually my husband's book, and he read it in like 2018. And I was like, "Can I borrow that?" And he was like, "Yes, of course." And I haven't gotten around to it. So it's just been sitting on this shelf for a long time now. And I feel like I should get to it at some point. Should I get to it right now? No, I feel like I should get to it right now. The other one, also speaking of speaking of my husband with this one, this is a book that he got me, Ethel Rosenberg by Anne Saba, about a woman who was executed because she was thought to be a spy during the Cold War. A plea for Ethel, the woman, an attempt to understand who she really was, to free her from the confines of stock political figures she inevitably became. But yeah, this is by an author named Anne Saba, and at the time that my husband gave me this book, I had actually, he didn't realize this, but I had just finished a book, or I was in the middle of reading another book by Anne Saba, which is called Les Parisiennes, which is about the women in French, or sorry, German occupied France during World War II. And I loved that book, but it's what I like to call like type 2 fun books, where you're happy that you read them after the fact because you got a lot from them, but the process of reading that book was a little bit tough. It was so well researched and really dense. And so it was following the lives of about 40 different women, which made it a bit tough for me to follow. Although the content of it was really interesting and I was glad that I read it, it was a bit tough to get through. So I wasn't ready to dive into another Anne Sabo book because I thought it would be another really interesting book that was really well researched but dense with a lot of facts. But now I'm ready. It's been enough time. And also, I think this will be easier for me to get through because it's about one person versus the toughest thing about Les Parisiennes was that it was following, again, like 40 different women, which made it tricky. Next question. A book a friend recommended that you haven't read. All right. This next one, not only did my friend recommend it, but I was actually at my friend's house and I was looking at her bookshelf. And she ended up giving me her copy of Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty. And I think I've talked about, when I read Demon Copperhead recently, I talked about the opioid crisis, how I think it's interesting. I also watched, what is that documentary, that Hulu documentary, like Dope Sick or something on Hulu, that I found was very interesting about the opioid crisis. And yeah, this is just supposed to be a phenomenal book, and I think that this is just a horrific thing that happened. This guy, the author of this, also wrote a book called Say Nothing about Northern Ireland, and it's funny because the whole back of the book is just about Say Nothing. It doesn't say anything about Empire Pain. But anyway, this is about the Sackler family, which I find interesting, and my friend who recommended it to me is actually a doctor, and just think that this is something that I I know about it because I've consumed some content about it, but I'm still just, it still just shocks me that this ever happened. It shocks me and scares me that this ever happened. So I definitely want to read this at some point. Okay, next prompt. A book you're procrastinating on. So, like, a lot, all of these. um, Actually, really, a book that I've been procrastinating on is Cloud Cuckoo Land. My brother gave me his copy of this book, which was very nice of him. He really enjoyed the book, but I've heard this is kind of a big brain book. You need brain power to get through it, and because I heard that it's a little bit confusing. And, I felt the same way. I heard the same thing about the book Trust by Hernan Diaz. And so I was kind of procrastinating on that one. And I just read it and it was so good. And it did take a little bit of brain power, but it was also phenomenal. So I need to stop procrastinating on this one just because I've heard people say that it's a little confusing. I've also heard really great things about it. So I'm getting in my own way here and I need to, I think, prioritize Cloud Cuckoo Land because a number of people in my personal life have said really good things about this one. So I've been procrastinating on it, but I think I'm ready. Next question is, what is next on your TBR? For that, I'm going to go with physical book on my TBR because I know that whatever comes up on Libby is just going to take priority because I there's a time limit on those, and so I get Libby books on my Kindle, and so a lot of times I'm just prioritizing books based on when I get them on my Kindle through Libby. But the next physical book that I want to read is Butter. I've had this sitting on my shelf for a while, and I just feel like I'm in the mood for this. I think that it's about a murder, and it's a little bit dark, and it's a little bit weird, and it's about, I think, a chef. It says a novel of food and murder, and I love food, and I've been wanting to get into horror recently, and I need a book that's going to make me feel something right now, even if that's fear, which I've said on here that I'm not into horror, but I don't know. I'm gonna, 2025 is my year to try to get into horror. And I don't even think this is horror, it's just about a murder. But I actually don't really know much about this. I think it's about a murderous chef, but I really don't know. But I'm excited to read it, and it's been sitting on my bookshelf for a while, so I think this is going to be next on my TBR, my physical TBR. And then the final prompt is to tag a few people in this who have the option to do this if they want, but also like no pressure. Do what you want to do. But these channels, I would love to hear their responses to this. Books That Teach Us, Books and Arrows, and Amy's Library. I would love to hear your responses if you care to do this tag. Honestly, this is my first tag that I've done since my BookTube newbie tag, and it was kind of fun. And I started this by saying that my brain was dead, and usually it's hard for me to think about what to say on a video, but this is really easy because they're prompts. So I didn't really need much brain power for this. So maybe I'll do more tag videos with prompts because, yeah, that was nice to just be able to respond. This outro is where you can tell that my brain said, okay, so I'm going to wrap this up and try to keep this short. But thank you, Read Write Reese, again for tagging me in this. And if you watched this far, thank you for watching. And I will see you on the next video.